Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. If you're here, you probably have just watched the Bridgerton Netflix show, or you've just finished reading the Bridgerton book series by Julia Quinn, and you're looking for some more historical romances to dive into. I love the show, I'm a big fan of the book series, and I love historical romance, so I have a bunch of historical romance recommendations that are similar to the Bridgerton series. I have a bunch of historical romances that are family oriented, that are light and fluffy, that are very fun and dramatic. They're all similar in vibes to the Bridgertons and the Bridgerton family. I've talked a lot about these throughout my entire channel. I have a bunch of historical romance recommendations video that you can also check out. But for this video, these are all the books that would be perfect to read right after you have binged watched the show or binge read the books. I'm gonna start off with the family oriented series. There are a bunch to choose from in historical romance besides the Bridgertons, and the first series that I'm sharing is by the one and only Lisa Kleypas. If you know me, if you have been subscribed to my channel, then you probably know that Lisa Kleypas is my favorite historical romance author. I have a whole guide to all of her books if you want to check out that video. And the first one is the Hathaway series. This is book 1, Mine Till Midnight. This is actually the hardcover. I do have the rest of the series in paperback. There are 5 books total, all about the Hathaway family. It's such a fun and loving series. I adore every single character in this family and all their significant others. So book 1, Mine Till Midnight, is actually fairly similar to The Duke and I because the heroine Amelia is the oldest sister of her family. She does have an older brother, but he hasn't really been taking responsibility, so she steps up to the plate. I love the family dynamics between the Hathaways. If you love the Bridgertons, you probably will really enjoy these characters as well. Amelia's hero is Cam. He is half Roma, half Irish. He's such a smooth talker, so charming. I love Cam so much. Their romance is very passionate, and even though Cam has been a self-proclaimed bachelor, he wants Amelia, but all Amelia wants is to take care of her family, and marriage has never really been in her plans. So Cam just does everything he can to win over Amelia and win over her family. This book is actually my second favorite of the series. It is so good and such an amazing start to this wonderful series. Book 2 is Seduce Me at Sunrise, about Wynne, and this is what the step back looks like. Wynne is another sister in the Hathaway family, and she has been in unrequited love. Well, she thinks she's in unrequited love, in forbidden love with a boy who was taken in by her family. What she doesn't know though is that Kev is also in love with Wynne, but he holds himself back from her. He doesn't think that he's good enough for her, and plus she has been sick pretty much her whole childhood, so he's terrified of hurting her. But then in this book we have a certain suitor who becomes a competitor for Kev, and now Kev has to go after the woman that he wants, the woman that he's been in love with all along, and claim her like she wants him to. I love these two. The romance is so angsty, so intense. Book 3, Tempt Me at Twilight, is yet another sister's story. This is what the step back looks like. This book is about Poppy Hathaway, and her hero is Harry Rutledge. Harry is a very powerful, wealthy hotel owner and inventor. He pretty much on sight is obsessed with Poppy. He is so very alpha, very intense. I loved him. He is one of Lisa Kleypas's most intense heroes in my opinion. This one is also a marriage of convenience romance. Harry and Poppy get into a bit of a scandalous position, and Harry offers marriage to Poppy to save her reputation. Unfortunately, even though Harry wants Poppy, he is not offering any kind of love. Harry is a bit of a cold hero. He thinks he's incapable of love, but Poppy does show him otherwise. Next, book 4, we finally get Leo's book, the oldest brother's book, Married by Morning. This one is an enemies to lovers romance. The heroine Catherine has been a paid companion to the rest of the Hathaways, but the thing is, Leo and Catherine do not get along. They don't like each other, so it's a complete surprise when Leo ends up kissing Catherine, and they both realize that they really want each other. Leo has been a bit of a terrible older brother, being drunk because he lost the previous love of his life, so now he never really wants to marry for love again, but he does need to marry, and apparently the only woman that he wants right now is Cat. If you love enemies to lovers, if you love the push and pull in a romance, this one is great. And then book 5, the last book of the series and my favorite of the series, is Love in the Afternoon. This book is about Beatrix, and this is the step back. Beatrix is the youngest of the family. She has always been a bit quirky. She connects better with animals than with other people. Her romance is an epistolary romance, so kind of similar to Sir Philip with Love from the Bridgertons. She writes letters to the soldier on behalf of her friend signing it in her friend's name, and she and that soldier end up kind of falling in love with each other because of these letters. But Christopher doesn't know that the woman that he's sending these letters to and has fallen in love with is not the woman that he thinks he's sending these letters to, and is instead Beatrix. So he finally comes back from war ready to marry this woman that he's been sending letters to, and is very confused when that woman is so different from how she appears from her letters. It is such a beautiful romance. I love the tension between Beatrix and Christopher, and you're on the edge of your seat waiting for Christopher to find out the truth. I love Beatrix and Christopher so much. Christopher is dealing with some PTSD from his time in war. The series and most of the other series that I'm going to be recommending can be read as standalones. Each book in the series can be read as a standalone. You don't have to read them in order if you don't want to. I'm the kind of person who just loves reading in order, so I do that. But they are all about different couples, so it has a beginning, middle, and ending, a happy ending for each of these couples. Lisa Kleypas has another family-oriented series. This one is the Ravenel series. There are 6 books so far. We're getting a 7th next year, and they are all about the Ravenel family. Book 1 is Cold-Hearted Rake. With the step back, Cold-Hearted Rake is about Devon Ravenel and his heroine Kathleen. Kathleen's husband, the Ravenel cousin, has just passed away, so Devon has inherited his Earl title. Kathleen is widowed and absolutely should not be feeling things for the new Earl. Devon has gotten this title that he's never wanted, these responsibilities that he never wanted, and is falling in slightly forbidden love with his late cousin's widow. This one is a great first book to the series. It's a great introduction to the rest of the Ravenels. And then we have book 2, Marrying Winterborn. I have this one in the beautiful hardcover. This heroine is Devon's younger sister Helen, who is very shy, very much a wallflower. She's quiet and keeps to herself. She has an opposites attract kind of romance because she falls in love with Reese Winterborn, who is the exact opposite of her, very powerful, wealthy, and forward. This book is pretty similar in vibes to Tempt Me at Twilight, except this time, instead of the hero being a wealthy hotel owner, Reese has gotten his fortune from creating the very first department store. And from the moment Reese sees Helen, he wants her, he needs her. He's a bit obsessed, and I love it. I love seeing a shy heroine falling in love with a powerful, confident hero. He ends up marrying her because there is no way that he can't have her in his life. It's another great romance. I love this one. This book, it was the one that got me hooked onto the series. And then book 3, and my favorite Ravenel book, is Devil in Spring. I love it so much. I have both the paperback and the hardcover. This is what the step back looks like. It is so gorgeous. But here we have Lady Pandora Ravenel's story. I apparently love Lisa Kleypas's more quirky heroines because Pandora is yet another one. She's not the typical young lady. She doesn't want to debut and go marry someone. She has very different ambitions. She actually wants to create a board game and make money from it. She wants to create her own business, and I just love her so much. So if you love Eloise from the Bridgertons, you will probably end up loving Pandora. Unfortunately for her plans, she ends up in a compromising position with society's most eligible bachelor, Gabriel St. Vincent. Gabriel never wanted to be forced to marry, but then since it's Pandora, he is very intrigued by her and ends up actually wanting to win her heart and win her love. I love this one so much. The romance is beautiful. Gabriel is swoony. Pandora is unique and lovable. They just made the perfect couple. Book 4 is Hello Stranger. With the step back, we have a female doctor for a heroine, and she falls in love with the Ravenel bastard. He's not a full-blooded Ravenel, but he still is related to the family. He's a former detective for the Scotland Yard, and both of them share this one very passionate night together. This is actually the one book that I still haven't read in this series, but I will get to it. I love that we have a heroine who is actually a doctor. She has a lot of prejudice against her, but she has worked so hard to get to where she is. I also have a hardcover of this book. Book 5 is Devil's Daughter. The heroine is actually the sister of Gabriel from book 3. She's a young widow, a single mother, and she falls in love with West Ravenel. This is what their step back looks like. West has a bit of a bad reputation. In his younger days, he was very wild, sowing his oats, but now that his brother has inherited the title, he has also inherited his own responsibilities. He's grown up since his younger days and is a wonderful older brother to his sisters. Phoebe ends up seducing West, and West, of course, can't help himself and falls for her. This one was a really sweet romance. I love seeing single parents in romances. The 6th and latest book in the series, and probably my second favorite of the series, is Chasing Cassandra. Cassandra. This is the gorgeous step back. The opposite of Pandora, she actually wants to marry, and she really wants to marry for love. Unfortunately, the one man that she wants and has fallen in love with believes he is incapable of love. Tom is another wealthy, powerful hero. He's a railway magnate. He grew up in poverty with no one to love him, which is why he's the way that he is. And I just adored how Cassandra showed him all the love that he deserves and that he himself is capable of loving other people. It's just so good. Another family-oriented series is the Destiny series by Beverly Jenkins. I adore Beverly Jenkins. She is such a good historical romance author. The series is about three brothers, the three Yates brothers, and it's also got a side romance involving their stepmother. Book 1 is about Logan. He ends up falling for his newly hired housekeeper. Mariah is hired by Logan's stepmother, and as soon as Logan and Mariah meet, they do not get along. There's some really great banter, great chemistry in this romance. They argue a lot, but they also want each other too. It was great. I had so much fun reading this one. Book 2 is Destiny's Surrender, about Andrew. His heroine Billy is actually a prostitute. She sort of becomes his mistress, the one prostitute that he sleeps with, but then she ends up getting pregnant. It's a surprise baby romance. Billy, with their newborn, goes to the Yates ranch so that Drew can take responsibility and be the father that their child needs. Billy is so feisty and so awesome. I loved her. And then the final book in the series, book 3, and my favorite of the series, is Destiny's Captive, about Noah Yates, the youngest brother. The heroine Pilar is a descendant of pirates, which I thought was so cool. I loved her. I loved her character. She's so strong and powerful. She actually ends up stealing Noah's ship. Now Noah is hunting down Pilar because he wants his ship back, and he also wants Pilar for himself. This one was such a fun and exciting romance. It's almost enemies to lovers, but deep down they really want each other. And in this book we also get the conclusion to the side romance for the brother's stepmother. That romance was so sweet and cute. It plays out through all 3 books, and you really grow to care for Alonza and her story. Another giant family in historical romance series is the Wilds of Lindo Castle series by Eloisa James. Here I do believe there are 8 siblings, though not every sibling gets their book. We have 5 books about the 5 oldest siblings, and then a prequel about the siblings' parents' romance, which does remind me I would really love to get a romance between Violet and her husband in the Bridgerton series. I feel like their romance would be so good to read. Before the Wild family, book 1 is Wild in Love. Wild in Love is about Alaric, the oldest son of the Duke, after his brother passed away. He is a bit of a celebrity in London. He has been going off on these crazy adventures, and someone from back home has been writing these crazy books about him. And unfortunately for him, the one woman that he wants does not want him because of his portrayal in newspapers. This one is sadly my least favorite of the series, but it does introduce you to the whole Wild family, the parents, the Duke and Duchess, and their 8 children. Book 2 is Too Wild to Wed with the step back, and this book was the one that made me fall in love with the series. The hero is North, a wild brother, and he has a bit of a second chance romance. He was engaged to Diana, but after she broke the engagement and broke his heart, he left for 2 years to go to war. Now he's back and is very surprised to see Diana again as his family's governess. There's a lot of scandal surrounding that, but North seems to find himself still very drawn to Diana, but she still has some secrets from him and is not able to marry him. Like I said, this one made me fall in love with the series. It was such a great romance, so very sweet and swoony and heartwarming. Book 3 is Born to be Wild with the step back, and this one is an enemies to lovers romance. Lavinia and Parth hate each other. Parth is like an adopted son in the Wild family. Lavinia gets into a sort of bad situation, and Parth somewhat becomes her matchmaker and tries to find her a suitable husband. Of course, we all know how this goes. Parth actually ends up falling for the person that he's trying to matchmake. This one was just a really great enemies to lovers romance. Book 4 is Say No to the Duke, and this one is a brother's best friend romance, and this is what the step back looks like. The heroine Betsy Wilde falls in love with her older brother's best friend. Betsy has been proposed to by a duke, but before she marries, she wants to go off on one last hurrah and do everything that men can do that women can't. Jeremy ends up helping her with this romance. They're really sweet together, they're really cute, so I really like this one. Book 5 is Say Yes to the Duke. This one is what the step back looks like. Here we have our heroine Viola, who is a painfully shy wallflower. She ends up meeting a man she finds that she is not shy with, the Duke, and Devin, our Duke hero, is pretty much head over heels in love with Viola from the moment that they meet. So it is a bit insta-lovey on his part, but I didn't mind it. I actually adored their romance. It's very slow, very sweet. Devin is very swoony and doing his best to win over Viola, win her heart and love, and get her to marry him. And then the latest book in the series is actually a prequel about the parents, the wild parents, and their romance. You can read this one first, or as a standalone, or after you've read all the other books. It's really short and sweet. Both of these characters are widowed and single parents. I thought it was such a feel-good romance, and I'm so glad that we got this prequel story. Continuing on with some of my favorite family-oriented historical romance series, this one is the Mackenzie series. I've only read the first 4 books about the 4 Mackenzie brothers, and I think the rest of the series has to do with some relatives of theirs, like some cousins, but I haven't read past book 4. Book 1 is The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie. Here we have Scottish heroes, kind of Highlanders, but they actually live in London. They hold titles and everything. In this romance, we actually have a neurodivergent hero. They don't know it in the book, but we do, us readers, that Ian is autistic, and because of that, the terrible Mackenzie father sent him to an asylum when he was young. But now he's out and he doesn't really interact with anyone except for his own family. But then he meets Beth and has found the woman that he wants to spend the rest of his life with. Ian is so swoony. I loved him. He's got a bit of some alpha tendencies because when he wants something, he gets it. Beth is a recent widow who has inherited a lot of money, so she's having the time of her life traveling over Europe, just doing everything that she was never allowed to do. And now she finds herself being seduced by Ian, and I just love their romance so much. Book 2 and my other favorite of the series is Lady Isabella's Scandalous Marriage. Here we have a second chance romance between an already married couple who are now separated. Book 2 is about Ian's older brother. Ian is actually the youngest of the 4 brothers. Mac is his older brother, and his romance with Isabella is full of angst and heartache and has some good grovel. They were young and in love, but Mac was a terrible husband, so Isabella left him. Mac, who was a bit of a drunk, he has now cleaned himself up, and now that Isabella has returned back to England, he's doing everything he can to earn Isabella's forgiveness and get her to stay with him. I just love this one. It hit all the right buttons for me in a second chance romance. Highly recommend it. And then last of the family-oriented series is this 3-book series that I read and fell in love with this year. It is the Uptown Girl series by Joanna Shoup. It is 3 books about 3 sisters. It is slightly different though from Bridgerton's. It is a lot sexier, so if you're wanting something with more heat, definitely read these Joanna Shoup books. It is also a Gilded Age historical romance series, which means it's set in late 1800s New York City. Book 1 and my favorite of the series is The Rogue of Fifth Avenue. All 3 of the Green sisters are very respectable ladies. They come from a respectable family, and of course they all end up falling for not so respectable heroes, and we love them for that. Frank does give off an appearance of respectability. He is a lawyer. He's a lawyer for the Green family, but he does not actually have that good of a reputation as everyone thinks he does. So when Mamie goes off to be a bit of a Robin Hood and save the poor people in her city, he goes to save her from the mess that she's getting into because he's very familiar with the poorer side of London. The romance is so hot, so full of chemistry. I love these 2 together. Book 2 is about Florence Green, the middle Green sister. Of all people, she falls in love with a powerful and ruthless casino owner. She actually meets Clay because she wants to open up her own casino, but one specifically for women. Clay agrees to mentor her, but he actually has plans for revenge against her father. It's intense, it's angsty, it's hot. So good. And then the third and final book, The Devil of Downtown, is about the youngest Green sister. Justine is a bit of a private investigator. She's a bit of a goody two-shoes, and our hero is the complete opposite of her because he's a gangster. He's a kingpin gangster. Jack pretty much rules the Manhattan underground. He's not a good guy, but they end up forming a bit of alliance together. I really enjoyed this one. It's a bad boy, good girl kind of romance, but historical romance. It was just a really great ending to this series. And then on to some light and fluffy romances, because the Bridgerton series is just really lighthearted and fun. One of my favorites with this vibe is The Secret by Julie Garwood. This is the first book in the Highlands Laird series. It is a medieval historical romance, so set way before the rest of these historical romances, but it is so fun, so funny and charming. I adored this romance so much. We have a Highlander hero, a Scottish hero named Ian. He's been asked by one of his people, because he is a Scottish laird, which is kind of like a duke, but he's been asked to travel travel with Judith, who is in London, and help her travel all the way to the Scottish Highlands because that's where her best friend is, and her best friend is about to give birth. They sort of go on this road trip, this historical romance version of a road trip. Judith is so awesome, so strong, smart, and independent. Ian really has no idea what to do with her. He's a very alpha kind of guy, but Judith just throws everything off and he is so intrigued by her. I had so much fun reading this romance. Julie Garwood just has so much charm to her historical romances, and is actually genuinely funny too. I can't recommend light and fluffy historical romances without including Tessa Dare. Tessa Dare is probably the most lighthearted and fluffy kind of historical romance author for me. You could read any Tessa Dare book and it would be perfect for some Bridgerton vibes. Her romances are always so cute and sweet. These are 2 books in the Girl Meets Duke series. In book 1, The Duchess Deal, we have a grumpy hero, a very broody hero who needs a wife. This is what the step back looks like. Emma and Ash enter a marriage of convenience, a marriage in name only, but of course they end up falling for each other. Book 2 is called The Governess Game. I don't have the paperback, but it was a really cute one. The rake hero, who is a single father, he falls in love with his governess. Book 3, The Wallflower Wager, is my favorite of the series. We've got another heroine who is very in tune with animals, more so than people. We've got a grumpy hero in Gabriel, and he is Penelope's neighbor. He's not happy about all the animals that Penny has been rescuing because they've been wandering off to his side of the house, so they make a deal that if Gabriel can find loving homes for each and every animal, she will get rid of them. It is so cute, like I cannot emphasize this enough. Tessa Dare books are adorable, so perfectly light, fluffy, and sweet. Another lighthearted historical romance is The Duke Who Didn't by Courtney Milan. Here we have an Asian historical romance and a bit of a second chance romance. Chloe and Jeremy are childhood friends, and on the brink of them getting together, Jeremy decides to leave and never come back for 3 years. Jeremy finally comes back, being his charming, sarcastic, lighthearted self. He is so very much a sunshine kind of character. He's a huge dork and you can't help but love him. So he's finally back, and now he's trying his best to woo Chloe and get her to marry him. The romance is just very sweet and charming. Chloe tries to resist, but Jeremy has always been the one for her. It is the start to a new series, and I'm so excited for more from Courtney Milan. If I'm gonna recommend some historical romances, I can't not recommend more Lisa Kleypas, and specifically her Wallflower series. I know it's a lot of books, but technically there are only 5. I just have multiple editions of each of them. And even more technically, there are 4 and then a prequel. I have to recommend the series mainly because it is a classic in historical romance. It is Lisa Kleypas's most known series, and Devil in Winter book 3 is so beloved. I'm also including it because even though they're not technically family, they are a found family, a found sisterhood. It's about 4 wallflowers who become best friends and find their own happily ever afters. Again, the magic is the prequel. It can be read as a standalone or read after the series, but this heroine is actually the sister of one of the heroes in book 2. This one is the most angsty, so not exactly the light and fluffy kind of read like Bridgerton was, but still it is so good. Also, this is what the step back looks like. It's one of my favorite books from Lisa Kleypas. It's a second chance romance. We have a heroine who is a respectable lady, and she falls in love with her family's servant, so it's a very forbidden star-crossed romance. McKenna unfortunately is forced away and actually makes a life and wealth for himself in America, but he does finally return home to England where Aileen is, and these two have never stopped loving each other. Even though McKenna kind of hates her now because of what happened when he left, these two are still so meant to be. I love the romance. It is beautiful, intense, and it will 100% break your heart. Book 1 of the series is Secrets of a Summer Night. All 4 books relate to a different season. This is what the step back of book 1 looks like. Annabelle, the heroine, is trying to save her family from ruin, which means that she needs to find a wealthy husband. This is when Simon comes in. He is wealthy, but he refuses to ever marry. So Annabelle and her 3 best friends, the heroines from the rest of the series, try to find her a more suitable husband. Now Simon has to decide whether he's willing to risk everything to love Annabelle. Book 2 is It Happened One Autumn. This one is an enemies to lovers romance. romance. So much good banter and chemistry here. This is what the step back of book 2 looks like. Lillian, the heroine, is an American heiress. Her father wants her to marry, but she is very much the independent kind of woman. When her family goes to the hero's estate, Marcus's estate, she finds herself intensely disliking Marcus. The feeling is mutual. They both find each other so annoying. It's such an entertaining historical romance. I love Marcus. He is perfect, and Lillian is just so awesome. Book 3, and everyone's favorite, well, mostly everyone's favorite, is Devil in Winter. We have a rake, a playboy hero who falls in love with a shy wallflower. This is the pretty winter step back. Evie is the shyest of the wallflower group. She has a bit of a stutter, but she does find enough confidence in herself to offer a marriage of convenience to the biggest rake in London, Sebastian. He is a man whore to the core, but there's something about Evie that intrigues him. So they enter a marriage of convenience, but Evie does make a stipulation. Because of Sebastian's past, Evie will not be sleeping with him until he can prove to her that he can be monogamous, which he's never been before. But since Sebastian wants Evie like he's never wanted anyone before, he agrees. Evie is awesome. I mean, she is the reason why Sebastian becomes the reformed man whore, the classic reformed man whore. This is also the book that the Ravenel series is a spin-off of, so if you do want to read the Ravenel series, I highly recommend also reading A Devil in Winter. The 4th and final book in the series is Scandal in Spring. Here is the step back, and this heroine is actually the sister of Lillian. Lillian from book 2. She's the kind of character who always has her nose in a book and is always daydreaming. Her hero is a ruthless entrepreneur and the total opposite kind of guy that she always imagined herself with. Matthew also works for Daisy's father, so they've known each other for a very long time. Her father is forcing her to marry Matthew, but she refuses. She doesn't want to end up with someone who doesn't love her. But little does she know that Matthew has always been into Daisy. The romance is passionate. Matthew is seductive when he needs to be. It's just a wonderful romance. All 4 books, well, all 5 books are fantastic. I cannot recommend the series enough. This last series that I'm recommending is a fairly new series. There are only 2 books out so far. It is the Sinful Wallflower series. Book 2 actually is just releasing at the end of December, but this series is fairly similar to the Wallflower series, where a group of wallflowers get together to try to find suitable husbands for themselves. It's a found sisterhood, and I just love seeing that in any kind of romance. These books also have a bit of a scandal going on because these heroines do some crazy things to get their romance. Book 1 is My Darling Duke, and it's got a bit of a Beauty and the Beast vibe to it. Catherine is the first wallflower in the series, and her family is on the brink of ruin. So in order to save her family, she pretends to be this reclusive duke's fiance, believing that he'll never find out because he never ventures into society. But she does this so that she can elevate her family and elevate her sister's position so that they can find good suitors and good husbands. But of course, the Duke hero does find out about this fake engagement. If you love slow burn, this book is for you. And even though I haven't read the 2nd book yet because it literally just released, I still have to recommend it because it's the 2nd book, sequel to My Darling Duke, and this is a book I have been so excited to read. We have another sinful wallflower in Marianne. She's a bookish heroine and no one seems to want to marry her, but then this scandal sheet comes out, which is also another reason why I had to include it in this Bridgerton recommendations list. There's a scandal sheet reporting this Marquis hero climbing out of someone's bedroom, and because Marianne doesn't want to marry this old man her parents have arranged her to marry, she ruins her reputation by saying that it was her bedroom that the Marquis was climbing out of. Now she just has to get Nicholas to not tell everyone the truth. Those were all my recommendations for historical romances to read after you've binged Bridgerton. If you missed it, I have videos on my review of the show series as well as the book series, so check them out. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you're planning on reading these, or if you have your own historical romance recommendations to share. Links to all these books that I mentioned will be down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!